In 1944, a week after Passover approximately, when we were all taken into the Dragomeresh ghetto, we were there, placed 3-4 families into one house, which actually would only accommodate, would consist of only a room and a half or 2 rooms. We were put in stables, and anyway, we were approximately from about 9 villages in that ghetto, and we were there for approximately 2.5 to 3 weeks. Then they deported us by carload to the ghetto, by railroad, and we traveled approximately 5 days. Then they told us to get out of the wagons of the cars. We were a load of people. We had to come forward little by little. As the crowd moved forward, we came finally to the front. Was a big SS man, thin, slim fella, with a whip like a horse whip in his hand. Did not see no weapon, and he kept pointing right or left. I was a capable young man, tall, so I was told to go to the right. What the left meant, we did not know. We saw during the early morning hours when we arrived those ovens. We only saw the chimneys and flames coming out of it, and the inmates who were there already for years told us this is what the crematoriums are. We were told to go into a big building there, to undress, put your clothes in all in a pile, not separate, but pile it up, all on top of each other, keep just the shoes and the belt. Then we were told to go into a room by a group of 12 to 15, and over there was like pools with blue water. We didn't know, we come from a small town, we didn't see this kind, and we were told to go in there. Now we know it must have been chlorine water. We were pushed in, whether we liked it or not, to jump into that cold basin like a pool. They shaved us off. We were cleansed. Then we were just given pants and a jacket, and we were waited till we finally took us to some barracks, and they told us to get into those bunks. There were 2 rows of bunks on each side, and the middle was like an aisle, like a coffin-sized aisle all the way down length, long barracks. We were there, a group of 20, 25 on the bunks laying next to each other. Then they called us out. They give us some kind of a plates where we're going to give us to eat, so all we got is soup. We were there about 5 days or 6 days. During that period, they kept asking for people with trades, professors, tailors, electricians. I was too young, I had no profession. Finally, after approximately 5-6 days, they told us to come out in the Appellplatz, and they took us, a whole group, and I remember we had to pass like a little river, and I had to jump over it to get onto the wagons, to the train cars. Some couldn't make it, they fell in the river, they remained there. Those that made it were up in the cars, and we traveled for a few days, approximately 3 days. Finally we looked out, we saw a station, Erfurt. And after that station, a while later they took us out, and we were right at the camp of Buchenwald. In Buchenwald, we were there for a few days. I remember the first days of Shavuos, it was where I got a hot soup, and it was amazingly noodle with chicken soup. And we thought this is the best camp. About a day later, they loaded us up onto trucks, and they took us away, approximately 3 to 4 hour ride. We came to an area where it looked like a construction area. And that we found out was the camp under construction, the camp of Dora. There was a big commando there, they called the Zawadzkie Commando, which later in time we found out they made the V1 in that camp, and that was the commando. I wasn't in it. I was assigned to a commando, they called it Kommando 88 Lageraufbau. We made the pipeline, the water, we dug the trenches to put the pipeline, the water line, we built the buildings. There were ready assembled walls made out of wood, which all had to be just like screwed in and assembled. It was already picked up. So in no time they built up the camp. I was there approximately till September. By the middle of September, the end of September, we were called to the Appellplatz. Without notice anything, they just lined us up and they start marching us. They marched to a few villages. I remember 2 or 3 small villages. We pressed through villages. We saw civilians. We finally came to a town and we saw the railroad station Ehrlich. Ehrlich had 2 camps. One was on one side of the railroad track, one of the other one right about a mile, about a mile to a half a mile from the station, from the railroad station. I was in that camp doing odd jobs. Can't even recall exactly. I did construction, I did camp building, all types of work. There was no such a thing as an assigned work. I did also in the Luftschutzkeller, they built a bunker for the civilians, and on that I worked for about 3 months' time. Till about the end of March, then one night they just told us to get out on the Appellplatz, and they loaded us up on cars, on railroad cars, and they took us, we didn't know where, but we figured we must have been traveling for about 10 days to 11 days. Back and forth. One place we noticed we were near Hamburg because it was a sign pointing that Hamburg is that way. But they took us back and forth, and finally we came to an area, the station said Bergen-Belsen. We were on a platform, and then we had to march about a mile to the camp, and that was the camp of Bergen-Belsen, which I was liberated on April 15. About 3 days before the liberation, we were very hungry. We weren't fed at all in Bergen-Belsen after arrival, and we heard a lot of noise, and we saw there were a lot of Russian prisoners in that camp, and they broke open like a cellar, what they built, you know, in the winter they shouldn't spoil the food with dirt and with straw covered, looked like a grave, and they found turnips, and we saw that, so we ran out. I ran too. I picked up a turnip big as my head, and as I picked it up and I wanted to run away with it, suddenly I felt like a cling, like a ring, and I fell down to the floor. I picked myself up, I ran, I couldn't go again. Then I put my hand behind the head, and I looked at my hand, it was full of blood. I dragged myself slowly to the place, to the building I was, and I had a cousin there, Solomon Glazer, and I knocked on the window, and he helped me through the window to get through the back window to get into the building, and he says to me, "You were shot in the head." He ripped off a piece of cloth from my coat, and he bandaged me. As he bandaged me, and I was laying there, not knowing what world I'm in, came in an SS, and he saw what a mess the room was, and he says, "You know what you are Schweine." That means you're pigs. And you should know that your brother, the Englishmen, are coming. And if you think they're going to like you Jews, they're not going to like you either, just as we don't like you. And you're not going to have it any better. And with a Heil Hitler, he left. Then next day, about noontime, we were out to be counted. There was no SS men around. We didn't see too many guards. And suddenly we heard roarings of trucks and like tanks. And the Russians started hollering. the British are coming, the British are coming. And that broke up the ranks and the files of the people. We all ran to see what, not trusting it was really a liberation, but that was the liberation on April 15.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I have a few questions to ask you concerning each concentration camp that you went through. The first one is, would you tell me the date of the arrival and by what method of transportation?
No, we arrived by railroad to the camp of Auschwitz.
What date was it?
That should have been early May.
1944?
Early May, about the middle of May, yes, I would say that.
Yeah, and Buchenwald, how much later?
Was, well, that would give us about 10 days later, 10, 12 days
and Dora,
later.
which was your third camp?
That would be the 5 days after Buchenwald. That would be about 17 days. And I would say in Buchenwald I arrived approximately about the beginning of June.
Yeah, and Erla, that was the
early in September, that was the end of September.
And Bergen-Belsen was the last
I arrived
time.
about approximately 3 to 4 days before April 15. I was about 11 to 12.
Also by railroad?
Yeah.
One camp you said
one
you
camp
walked
we walked.
to.
We
Which
walked from
was that?
Dora to Early, which is only a 3-4 hour
Yeah.
walking because all the camps were small camps nearby.
Okay,
It was
fine.
near Sachsenhausen, near the area.
Did you arrive alone or with family?
Oh, to Auschwitz I arrived with my mother.
And
But after Auschwitz I was all alone on my own and with the rest of the
after
people.
that there was selection. Your mother
And
was...
in Auschwitz we were separated. There was each for its own, except there were other inmates.
Yeah. Did you know what the selection meant?
Well, selection we didn't know at the time, but later we found out that selection meant capable people of working were going to the right and the left. It
When did
means
you
to the
find this
crematorium.
out? A day after?
Well, soon enough, because we were looking for our families during that early morning hours, or during the night, I should say, and we were trying to, and they kept on telling us, the other Häftlinge, don't worry about them, they don't even think of them no more. This is no families no more.
Describe the size and the location of the camps and the guard system.
Well, the location cannot be described by me because I was only limited to certain areas. I cannot describe the
Whatever you know,
location.
that's all we ask.
The location, only Auschwitz is known as to be a big camp, and they had their own railroad sidings, and trains came on right up to the gates. Buchenwald was not far from a nice town, which is known, Weimar and Erfurt. And Dora was right near Nordhausen, which was also actually like a visible area from the city of Nordhausen. There was Dora, and Ehrlich, of course, was right in the heart of the town. So that was the location of the thing. The size of it is...
Were you in contact with the citizens of the
No,
town?
you
With
could not be in
inhabitants?
contact. The guards could not let you be in contact, of course. There's no such a thing as being in contact with civilians. They came in like they had masters. They called them masters, which were supervisors in their certain fields. Like in my commando, when I worked in Wasserleitung, they had the supervisor who had to direct how the work is being done. We were not professionals, so we had to do what he told. But always under guard. We couldn't discuss or ask any questions.
And do you know when these camps were set up?
Well, the Camp Dora, the one camp that I know, was in the middle of construction when we got there, and that was a complete new camp. They barely had 3-4 buildings when I got there. And that camp actually was a new camp, Camp Dora.
Okay. Can you name any of the commanders or officers?
No,
that you
because
came in contact
I was too young to have even ideas of recalling. I can recall atrocities, but I cannot recall names or...
But you remember faces and characters?
Faces is just that remember because you dealt with a person.
Yeah. What kind of characters? How would they treat you?
Well, as far as treatment, I avoided any contact with them as far as possible. I did not try to be in their way. I was rather doing my work and hiding away, not to be in their faces. Because when you were in their way, they always found a reason to persecute you.
Tell me, how many Germans guarded the camps, approximately? You would know exactly, but estimate.
They had enough to guard because nobody really attempted to escape, and none of these camps that I was in did I hear of an attempt to escape, for the reason there was no way where to escape. They were all surrounded by camps, as I mentioned, all the door and alley open within a few hour walking areas, and there was no way. And guards, they had enough. They didn't have too many young ones because it was in later years, but they didn't have too many young men.
Were there any non-German guards, or were they all SS?
No, I had the Wehrmacht and I had Luftwaffe, not necessarily SS. SS were only the upper personnel. They even had Hungarians who were Hungarian volunteer in the German Wehrmacht. Elderly people, like 55, 60, they were there guarding us.
Do you remember any incidences of individual Nazis that you would be able to accuse of being war criminals? You said you did experience.
I did experience,
atrocities.
but not by name or by sight. I experienced already where a shepherd already actually destroyed a person. I saw him being pushed into the sewer line, and whenever the man tried to come up, he just didn't give him a chance, and actually the dog ripped him apart. But I couldn't pinpoint who or what because I was too young. I wasn't even 17.
Would you tell me a little about your inmates? How many in a room? What were the ages?
Well, the ages,
All men.
there was no younger one that you can judge, not younger than 17, 16 and a half, because they all were actually gassed. And the elderly ones, you can only judge to approximately that time, maybe 50, 55, because if they were not capable for work, they just weren't around anymore.
How many in a barrack, approximately?
Well, one barrack was like in Auschwitz, there was probably 200 even, and in some areas they had like a dilapidated factory, and you couldn't really...
Were there any non-Jews as inmates?
Yeah, well, I had non-Jews French, and I had from Holland, I had a lot of them.
In short, what kind of work did you do?
What work I did?
Yeah.
I did mostly
earlier.
was the work that I did in the water pipeline setting up, and the chemical construction.
Yeah. Describe the food there.
The food is only described one way. There was only one meal issued a day, and that was a third of a loaf of bread, approximately, I would say 10 ounces of bread. And one night they gave to it a piece of marmalade, the next day a slice of approximately quarter-pound salami, and another night they gave a piece of who knows what kind of meat it was, and one night it was a piece of margarine. But actually the main consistence was only the third of a bread.
Would you be able to describe the daily routine? Like, when did you get up in the morning? How many
Whenever
hours
they
you worked?
felt like waking you, they woke you up. There was no how many hours.
routine?
There was no such a thing as routine. There was no this.
No
This was
routine.
not a
Every day was
unionized place.
different? Every day was different?
There was no such a thing as being off. Sunday afternoon, every second Sunday afternoon, we had off to wash up a little bit. And there was no such a thing as hours. They wanted to wake you at 3 o'clock in the morning, they got you 3 o'clock. They wanted to let you go to sleep 7 in the evening, they let you 7. But there was no such a thing.
Okay, I have a few more questions.
Go
It
ahead.
shouldn't take long. Were people killed in your inmates of yours? Like, were they missing the next
I
day?
lost
Were they
plenty.
taken
I
away?
saw them dead, and I even slept on dead bodies instead of a pillow.
Were there any Action? Do you know what that is?
Action, not in my camp. In my
No.
camp was no action.
Were there any attempts to escape? You mentioned
No attempt at all. There was nowhere to escape.
And
What
organized underground or
for? No,
resistance?
not in that area.
No contact
We
with the
were in the
outside.
heart of Germany, so could not really
Yeah.
even been attempted.
Any attempts with cultural activities?
No, never heard of. Each one was worried of his own skin.
Yeah. Any children hidden or open?
Never saw a child in
Under
the camp.
17, they were
Never.
taken away.
There was no children in our camp.
Yeah. What was the relation of Jewish inmates with Jews from the same town, or if they were from a different town? Did it matter? Was there any antagonism? Like,
No antagonism, because we didn't even know the Jewish except for the symbol on this jacket.
yeah.
And we did not even discuss it because we were only worried about the next day of living.
Did you ever receive help from your fellow inmates?
Well, the only help they could give me is feel sorry. They could not help even
Well,
themselves.
your cousin helped you.
Well, that was already when we were in one group. But otherwise, when you were, if there would have been a guard around, he couldn't have attempted to help me that either.
Were you ill? Were you ever ill?
Well, ill, but nobody made notice of it.
And how did you recover? Just passed?
From this year, after the British came in, of course, I was treated.
Mm-hmm.
And it healed. It was like a grace, but up to this day I have a scar on my head, in the back, and where the hair don't grow.
Yeah. Was
And
there
this
any
is with me.
medical attention of any kind?
There was no medical attention in my camp, except there was a shown room, they called it. But if you had a headache or something, they gave you the right to go in there. But if you went in there, the chances were that they assigned you to a Krankenblock, they call it Kranken quarter, where you never saw finished. That was it. They cut you rations and you had to die of it. So in other words, nobody really wanted even to claim they're sick.
Yeah. Who was this run by, Jews or Germans?
That was all in German prisoners. I mean, the prisoners ran it under the German supervision.
Would you describe clothing and sanitation conditions?
Clothing and sanitation. I got one jacket and one shirt in a year's time. I got one undershirt in 1 year's time, and it only lasted for 6 months. After 6 months, I made from a cement sack, I made myself a sweater. I cut out this corner, made of the sleeve, and that was a cement paper sack was my sweater.
Okay, did you receive mail or parcels? I suppose not.
I didn't even know what mail means.
I understand. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.